Welcome to episode 195 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I'm your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from our virtual studio on the internet by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who is not attending the Gospel Coalition Conference this year, John Scott Sloat.
Doc, what's happening?
Well, this is a bit of a role reversal here since usually it's you being the one on the road and me being back in Winona Lake. Now the roles have flipped here. And so I am on the road and you are in your office there on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary.
Yeah. How's it feel to be on the road? Is this part of your future? You could see yourself doing the traveling speaking gig?
It's not all it's cracked up to be. I don't mind traveling, but I also don't like for this kind of thing. Like I love traveling for, seeing the world and that
Sure.
kind of thing. But in terms of the whole conference circuit, this is not something I'm pining to be hitting regularly. So, I mean, normally I go to two conferences a year, either Gospel Coalition and what used to be Together for the Gospel, and then the Evangelical Theological Society conference. So,
And the Society for Biblical Literature. Don't forget.
yeah, that's the same place, just right after it. So,
Yeah.
So yeah. Let's. Are you feeling FOMO? Because I mean, there are some Grace people down here, and normally, I mean, in the past, you've even led a cohort of Grace students down here.
Yeah. Is there a cohort of Grace students down there this year?
There are scattered ones, no cohort. I wouldn't call it a cohort.
Okay. I saw some friends that will be there this week. I saw them last week. I know one of my favorite churches will be down there in force in Mass this week. But so I saw them. So I got that sort of relational connection last week. I'm not feeling too much FOMO. Anything of any value is anything that's really big news, not of value, of big note, is going to be on Twitter, blog posts, and podcast later on. So
I see.
It's a matter of patience at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so clearly you just identified yourself as a full-fledged millennial there by saying anything significant happening in the world is going to be accessible via social media.
Yeah. I like to think it's patience, that I'm willing to wait for it rather than, needing to be on the ground for it. But
I see. Anyway, if you'd like to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter at VNSPod. You can email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. And we would love for you to leave a review and a 5-star rating. Let's jump right into the sports here, John. A lot going on this weekend. How about we actually start with the NFL and get that out of the way?
Okay, that sounds good.
So this is your therapy moment to kind of have your catharsis about your Jets. They lost, what was it, 15-10 to the Patriots?
Yeah, that sounds right. 15-10.
And Zach Wilson is still terrible.
Well, yes. And everybody keeps going, well, this is the defense's fault, 0 sacks. The defense is not living up to its expectation for sure. But this is still, 120 yards of offense. They're putting 9 or 10 in the box and daring us to throw the ball.
Yeah.
And we're not doing it. So I think Zach Wilson had 140 yards passing. There was one play with a beautiful pocket for him to pass in. And he got so alarmed that people were within 5 feet of him that he just fell to the ground. Did you see this video on Twitter?
Oh, I did.
Oh my goodness. I'll send it to you later. It was a disaster. It's time to cut bait with him. This is not a developmental project anymore. This is, he needs to be, sent back to Utah and forced to marry 4 women or whatever they do out there.
Wow. I was going to suggest maybe going a Mormon mission.
Mormon mission. Yes, I'm sure he skipped that, but But yeah, it was not good. So I think it's time to just cut bait, say see you later, because it's just not working out. I'd prefer to see Tim Boyle. I'd prefer to see Carson Wentz, and Matt Ryan.
Carson Wentz, wow.
Any of those guys. Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz are the two names that I keep hearing. Matt Boyle, I think it's Matt Boyle. Tim Boyle is our third string guy. I'd rather see him. So, yeah, it's if you don't have any threat of any sort of passing game, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that caught my attention, though, let me back to the Jets just for a minute. I mean, the Jets, they only did give up 13 offensive points. I mean, 2 of those points were a safety.
A safety, yes.
So, I mean, in the NFL, if you only give up 13 points in a game,
you're going to win most of those games.
You should expect to win that.
Yep.
So, yeah. And then
the other news coming out of that game was that Mac Jones punched Sauce Gardner in a sensitive area.
Okay, well, I saw there was a little bit of a scrum there. Like there was an defensive lineman that like threw him to the ground.
Yeah, that was our linebacker CJ Mosley threw Mac, and that was right after that moment.
Okay, and then Sauce Gardner got up and started and like pushed him to the ground. So that was in response to Mac Jones
taking a cheap shot, yes, because he is a patriot, and represents scum.
Okay. All right. On the opposite end of offensive struggles, we had the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, scoring 70 on the Broncos.
Yes.
Which the Broncos are now 0-3.
They're terrible.
With Sean Payton, who doesn't look himself. Have you seen a photo of Sean Payton recently?
No.
He looks like he just stumbled off a party bus and decided to coach a football team, and it is not going well.
Yeah. First time that an NFL team has scored 70 points in a game since the 60s.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Also, speaking of teams that struggle, the Chicago Bears are terrible. And
now they did play one of the best teams in the NFL.
Yeah, but they're still terrible.
They played bad, though. Yeah.
And I think there's plenty of blame to go around, but Justin Fields was terrible. And I think the Bears have ruined him. He needs to get out of there, get to a new system, new coach, new scenario. They broke him. They've made him worse between last year and this year.
He had some good flashes yesterday. He had a long pass down the sideline that was just dropped. It was on the money, so every now and then he puts a good throw out there. It shows he has talent.
He's got the talent. They've just ruined him. And then CJ Stroud actually looking very good for the Texans.
Yeah.
They got their first win of the season, and through 3 games, he has not thrown an interception. That's pretty impressive for a rookie quarterback. And it's not like he's like throwing for 125 yards. Like he's throwing for 250, 275 a game, and not throwing picks.
Well, he's better than Zach Wilson.
By far.
Probably the biggest news from the NFL Sunday was that Taylor Swift was in Arrowhead Stadium to watch her. I don't know if I'm willing to say boyfriend yet, but romantic friend Travis Kelce.
Yes.
Play football.
Yes.
So that's been fascinating, and it feels like he's popping up in more and more commercials now.
Yeah.
Man, I'm excited for the song Arrowhead, that she's going to write.
When it all goes south, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. The whole merging of the pop culture world and the NFL.
When Adam Schefter's reporting on Taylor Swift, it was an interesting Sunday afternoon, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm actually glad I wasn't around to watch the game, because I think I would have been sickened by the 432 cutaways to Taylor Swift sitting next to Travis Kelce's mom up in the skybox there.
It didn't seem like it was the family was up there. It seemed like a bunch of her friends were up there, but
his mom was there, I think, right?
Was she?
I believe so.
I did not look into it that deeply, but it was definitely the Dolphins scoring 70 points was a big deal. But other than that, it may have been the biggest storyline from the NFL week.
I'm sure.
Not for me personally. I'm talking out there in the world. It was one of the most talked about things.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get to the really interesting stuff. Big weekend of college football.
Yeah.
And obviously the game of the weekend was, in fact, Ohio State going into South Bend and winning in dramatic fashion over Notre Dame, 17-14, scoring initially looked like literally on the last play of the game. As time expired, they reviewed it and discovered there was 1 second left, so that Ohio State still had to kick the ball off. But yes, did you catch any of this game?
No. I was in bed.
I mean, it did start at 7:30. I mean, you could have caught the first half.
I could have caught the first quarter. That's true. I did not.
Yeah, the first half was a bit of a defensive slugfest. It was 3-0 at the half, Ohio State. Both teams got stopped on downs inside the 10-yard line, or not inside the 10, but it basically had red zone opportunities, didn't score. So yeah, second half, this looked like two very good teams just slugging it out. So it's a great win for Ohio State. I made the mistake. Twitter's just toxic. I mean, Twitter's toxic all the way around. But college football Twitter is just unhinged toxic. But did you see? I forgot to send you the clip. I was going to send you the clip and I forgot. So after the game, they interviewed Ryan Day. You know how immediate interview on the field, right? And Ryan Day, the coach of Ohio State, went off on Lou Holtz. So Lou Holtz, legendary Notre Dame football coach, he's like 86 now. I think Thursday made comments about how Notre Dame was going to win because Ohio State's soft and they don't, they're not tough enough and that sort of thing. So after Ohio State won the game on the field, the on-field reporter asks Ryan Day, basically, what was it that made the difference that enabled you guys to pull it out? And he goes on this epic rant where he's like basically shouting at the reporter about toughness and about how Ohio State's proven they're tough. And he says something like toughness, and he says, "I want to know where Lou Holtz is." It's like almost like he's like, I want to go talk to him face to face. Like it was the strangest thing. And then he repeated those comments in the post-game press conference. Like he was still worked up about it. So it's just a fascinating dynamic there. But
the best part of that is that he calls out Lou Holtz by name.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Did he do it in the post-game presser as well?
Yes.
Called out Lou Holtz by name? That's incredible.
Yeah.
I once ran into Lou Holtz at a Jimmy John's in South Bend. He made no comments about Ohio State at the time, but
yeah. Well, I mean, so people are like, yeah, real classy going after an 86-year-old guy. And it's like, well,
he started it.
That's right. Like, yeah. And then I saw someone else point out, like, well, I mean, basically he's the same age as our president and he's not off limits. So, but yeah, very good win for Ohio State. I think Kyle McCord, their first year starting quarterback, he led the game winning drive down 4 with 1:26 left, drove them 65 yards to get the touchdown with some crucial throws that got them in position. So, I think Ohio State still has some flaws, but there are no great teams this year in college football. Every team has weaknesses and flaws, and so it can be a very wide open year.
What can I ask you about another team that seems to have fallen from grace a bit?
Sure.
Well, what's going on with Clemson? They were ranked to start the year, I believe, but I believe they've lost 2 of their first 3.
2 of 4 now. Yeah, 2 of 4. They lost to Florida State in overtime. I don't know. I mean, I think part of what's interesting is that some people are framing it as they are adamant about not going into the transfer portal and improving their team. Like they've taken like a principled stand on that. And people are saying, well, that's dumb in today's college football world. And so some people are pointing to that. I don't know. I think I think that they have had some recruiting misses, and their quarterback is okay this year, not great. And after they had Deshaun Watson, then they had Trevor Lawrence. I mean, and now the guys that they've had since then have been a pretty significant step down, and that makes a difference. Also in the college football world, and this is brought up because you want to track this. I mean,
I do want to track this. Yeah.
Oregon absolutely curb stomped Colorado.
Yeah.
I think the final was 42-6, but it was I think it was 35-0 at the half. Like just an absolute shellacking.
So I did see a tweet that in 24 hours the state of Colorado lost football games by like 135 points or something like that. Like between the Broncos and Colorado.
Yeah.
They just got shellacked.
Yeah. So, I mean, did you see any of the Oregon coaches' comments?
I did not. No.
Okay. So they played this before the game. So he allowed cameras into his locker room before the game for his pregame speech. And he was basically like going off in terms of, they're playing for clicks. We're playing for wins, but this game isn't played in Hollywood. It's played on grass, like basically taking direct shots at all of the hype surrounding Colorado and Deion. And then they went out and absolutely just annihilated them. So just an interesting dynamic. I think Colorado was obviously exposed. Like they're much better than people thought they were going to be, but all the hype from the first 3 games was kind of put in its proper perspective, playing a legit top 10 team and Oregon just taking it to them.
Mm-hmm. Or even a historic program like Oregon versus what feels like a startup for Colorado right now.
Yeah, I mean, Colorado was relevant in like the 90s.
Yeah.
But hasn't been relevant since. So, props to Deion for making them relevant again and getting good players and turning it around on the field. Like they're a legit solid football team. But, the hype, I think, is what annoys me, to be honest. You know me, John. I am not a hype person. Like, give me substance, give me, So it was the hype stuff that was annoying me in the whole conversation. But
worth tracking, though. Worth continuing to watch that Colorado saga.
Yeah, well, and it's predictable. Okay, it's predictable in so many ways. I mean, the media loves to build something up and then tear it down. That's often how our media works.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got so many dynamics here, both in the college football world, and then you've got, Deion Sanders, who is an outspoken Christian of some kind. We can put it that way. Is that fair?
Yeah, yes, of some. I appreciate the of some kind.
Yeah. I think he's a big like TD Jakes guy.
Uh-huh.
So some borderline prosperity gospel-ish kind of talk. Anyway, and then you've got, of course, people trying to pursue the race angle in all this. People hate Deion because he's black. Well, some of the just dumb, simplistic, hot takes out there.
Sure. The real winners in the Deion Sanders bit, in my perspective, is the administration of Colorado, who
Oh
hired
yeah.
him. Like,
Oh, they're making serious money
which
off
which
of.
is why I saw buzz this week about NFL owners, not general managers, wanting to bring Deion Sanders on as a coach to the NFL, wanting Deion Sanders to be the head coach of an NFL team.
But I don't think it would work the same way in the NFL as it works in college.
Nope, I don't think so. I certainly don't think it leads to long-term success as a football team.
No, no. Anyway, we better move on. You ready?
Sure.
All right. We are continuing today our series based out of Second Peter, and the series of character qualities that we are supposed to add on to our faith. And so today we come to virtue. And
Nope.
so no, sorry, I misspoke. Knowledge.
There we go.
There we go. Yes. Trying to do too many things at once here. I was trying to pull up the text so we could read it. Do you have it handy?
I have it up on my screen here.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't you just go ahead and read the key verses there, just so we're back up to speed about what we're talking about here.
Yeah, you want me to start at where? 3, or do you think just 5?
Yeah, five through 8 would be good.
Okay. For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, and steadfastness with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. For if these qualities are yours and increasing, they keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Okay. So we're talking about knowledge today. And so when you think of that term in this context, John, what is it that comes to mind? What do you think Peter is talking about here?
So, I mean, what comes to my mind is certainly things like facts, things like solid truths, right? That are real, but not just that. I think adding to that, like a personal knowledge, so knowledge of the person of Jesus Christ. So I think verse 8 helps explain this a little bit more, because I believe that's the same word used there, knowledge of Jesus Christ in verse 8, that's used in at the end of verse 5 here. So that'd be my 2 cents as I'm walking through this. Yes, we need to know things. Yes, we need to know. Yes, adding knowledge of history, philosophy, sciences. All those things are certainly in view. But what sits as priority over those is a personal knowledge of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's easy for us, I think, in our contemporary experience to separate those two things out.
Yeah.
Whereas biblically, I think they're a little bit more integrated.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of how the biblical authors think about the idea of knowledge, because ultimately, even this is connected with the Hebrew word for hear, which can also be translated obey, with the sense of basically you only truly hear something when you respond to it appropriately, is the idea. And I think when it comes to knowledge, those two integrated senses of information, of course, is essential, foundational, but it's intended to produce relationship with God, that God reveals himself not merely to give us the correct intellectual information about the world or about himself. He's not content with just, oh, good, you have all the facts about me. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
It's I reveal myself so that you will know me personally. And it's that sort of combined notions of information plus relationship that comes together in that idea, I think, of knowledge.
What do you make of the listing here? Maybe this is an interesting thing to talk about. What do you make of virtue coming first, and then knowledge coming second, and then self-control coming third? Is that a priority list, or are these things supposed to be growing all together? Like, how do you view that and think about that interpretive decisions here?
Yeah, I think I mean scholars have debated for a while in terms of, is there an intentional sequencing of these qualities? And I don't think there is necessarily a profound reason why they're in this order, other than to say that that it begins with faith and culminates in love.
Hmm.
I think those things are intentional. Everything in between, I'm not quite willing to see it as strictly a logical sequence. But at the same time, um, if you start with the idea of, if you think of virtue or excellence as um, encompassing the totality of a person's life, uh, that almost speaks towards like an orientation of life.
Hmm.
And then knowledge perhaps then would come along and help steer that properly, both um, both at the intellectual level and the relational level. That it's only in knowing Christ that those things find their truest form.
Hmm. And so you would see supplement your faith with virtue, and then essentially supplement your virtue with knowledge as
Mhm.
a rhetorical device, basically, that Peter's
Yeah,
using here. Okay.
yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, it's one of those things where um, knowledge, and this is honestly where seminaries have gotten a bad rap. That seminaries can focus on head knowledge so much that that the sort of relational dynamic gets lost in that, and that's certainly a danger when you pursue theological education, that you can get so enamored in the the discussions of specific theological nuances or the interpretation of a text and those kinds of things, that you lose the relational dynamic of, it's important to talk about this and to try to understand it so I can know God better,
Yeah.
not just so I can win arguments and impress people with my own knowledge base.
Now, I've heard a number of guys, well-meaning, well-intentioned individuals talk about, like, well, how do you guard against that reality? Well, you separate your time. You have your personal spiritual time, and you have your academic spiritual time. Um, I don't necessarily ascribe to that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to know where you're at on that. I would certainly be for personal devotion to Scripture. Like, don't hear me say otherwise, but I think that sort of separation of the two
Mm-hmm.
is not as helpful, and really just changing a mindset of being like, actually, this is all worship. This is all about getting to know God better,
Yeah,
and fusing Him into your life.
yeah,
That would be much more my take. Do you take a similar approach to that?
yeah. I mean, um, I think one of the reasons that that sort of stereotype exists within seminaries is, quite frankly, that sometimes that happens in terms of seminary professors have not always been the best, and this is true in my experience. Some were really good at this, of connecting whatever it is we were talking about to the relational dynamic of knowing God, knowing Christ, and others were not as adept. at making those connections.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot hangs on the seminary professor to, and this is true in the church as well. I mean, it's not just a seminary thing. You can get pastors who are really into the sort of into theology and these sorts of things. And so their sermons are heavy on the sort of data information dump, or their Sunday school classes. And, people can lose sight of, so how does this help me know God better? And so we need to do a better job, I think, as seminary faculty across the board. I'm speaking very generically, not specific to our institution, but just helping students to see that connection between whatever knowledge you're giving them, whether it's a theology discussion or the interpretation of a passage or things like that, to how does this help me know God better and love him more fully by understanding this?
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, even in the context of marriage, the longer you're married, the more you continue to learn about your spouse. And not just on a sort of like fact level of like, oh, their favorite color is red, or, they don't like tacos, or, like just sort of basic. I know who doesn't like tacos.
Who doesn't like tacos? Yeah. Red flag.
I know. But, even I've been married 27 plus years now, and there are still times where I'll sort of learn something about my wife that either surprises me or that I didn't fully realize. And so, how much more with a being like God, who is infinite and eternal and beyond us? How much more is there to learn about God in the relational dynamic, as well as the sort of just straight up information aspect of things,
So Doc, what are some ways we can pursue this knowledge? What are some ways that we can go after this? What comes to mind for you?
Well, I mean, we have never lived. There's never been a time in the history of the world where it's been easier to access good, faithful biblical teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's an embarrassment of resources out there. Now, the flip side of that is that there's also a lot of junk. So you have to sort through. You have to be discerning.
Yeah.
But I think one way, obviously, reading is an important discipline to be cultivating, reading good books, but involvement in the local church and being in a context where you're learning together with other believers, whether that's in like a Sunday school context or a small group context, or even just sitting in the sermon together and then discussing it. I think those are crucial environments. I think where we can get into trouble is when we isolate ourselves and just think, oh, this is just a very individualistic sort of thing to pursue knowledge. I just read and then I think about it, and then that's it. Reading or even just reading a book with a friend, or discussing an article together, or listening to a podcast and then discussing it with someone, I think brings out a dynamic, because people experience that sort of content differently and will latch on to different things. I mean, you and I have both seen this where we take students, for example, in the past, when we've taken students to a conference like this, to the Gospel Coalition. And then afterwards, we'll talk with them about whatever the keynote message was for that night. And then we all heard the same message, the same 45 to 60-minute message. And yet different students will pull out different aspects of it and say, well, that really challenged me, or that really convicted me.
Yeah.
And that sort of relational dynamic, that sort of community dynamic, I think only reinforces things for other people, and maybe brings things out that, like, oh, I didn't really catch that, but that is really helpful. that kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah. For sure. I also think an attitudinal change around learning as well, that this isn't going to kill your spiritual life. This
Yeah,
is changing the attitude as a way, as this is a way to grow and enhance your
yeah,
spiritual life.
yeah.
As commanded by Peter here, in God's word, would be a helpful piece as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think that um, there needs to be an intentionality, especially uh, for some people who are not wired that way by nature. Um, it might take more intentionality than for others. I mean, uh, I, just to be fully honest here, um, I get nervous when I hear people who are leaders in ministry who are like, "Yeah, I'm not much of a reader. I really don't read." That to me is a monstrously large red flag,
Yeah.
because I want to know, like, okay, so how are you growing? Like, and maybe they're like, well, I listen to these podcasts that are okay, so it's the reading part of it that you're not as good, but you're listening to good podcasts that stretch you, like, okay, but you know, a ministry leader who is not reading at some level and stretching themselves and growing, it's hard for me to see how they're not uh, um, cutting themselves off from necessary streams of growth in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think about um, even secular people who are the most influential tend to talk about how much they read, tend to talk
Mm-hmm.
about how much they absorb, tend to talk about how curious they are and how much they're trying to learn. I don't run across, I run across very few people that are like, yeah, I lead this organization and I read like, an article a year or something like that. Like, I just don't run into those people. And so reading certainly a way to better your spiritual life, but it's also just a way to enhance your whole life as well.
Yeah, but and even back to the motivation piece, it, especially in the relational context, um, if you really want to love God well, then it makes sense you want to know Him as well as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's true in relational contexts. If you think about marriage, like if you want to love your spouse well, you want to pay attention and learn them and learn how to love them well. And I think how much more then on the spiritual dynamic of wanting to love God well, then it'd be good for you to pursue knowing Him more deeply, to love Him more faithfully.
Hmm.
All right, John, we should probably move on.
Sounds good.
All right, time for this day in sports history.
All right, this day in sports history, September 26th, 2023, September 26th. In 1908, the Chicago Cubs, Ed Reulbach
Sure.
becomes the only pitcher to throw a doubleheader shutout, winning 3-0 and 5-0 over the is that Super Bats?
I think, or Superbas.
Superbas at Washington Park in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
I assume that was a misspelling.
It's literally copy and paste from the site I use, so I
Okay.
don't know.
Wow. Okay, 1978, New York District Court Judge Constant Baker Motley. That's quite the name, by the way.
Constance Baker. My guess is that she married and took the last name, so maybe Baker was her maiden name.
Sure. I'd assume the same thing, but that's quite the name.
It is.
Rules that women sports writers cannot be banned from, I assume, male locker rooms.
Yeah.
Something that we've just grown accustomed to right now, right? I mean, I think the guys are like, all right, the press is coming in, cover up.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of what happens in those locker rooms now, and it's not a big deal anymore. But I'm sure in 1978 that was a big deal.
Yes.
All right, 1983, Matt, could you move your cursor off that? I can't quite read that word.
There we go.
There we go. Not that I can pronounce it anyway.
Yeah.
Ali Haji Shakeh. I don't know.
I'm guessing that's just shake or chic. Probably shake.
Okay. Kicks a 56-yard field goal for the New York Giants record.
Yes.
It feels like I don't know. Did you watch the Colts game yesterday?
I caught very limited bits and pieces.
So the kicker kicked like 4 field goals over 50 yards to win the game.
Yeah, I saw that stat.
Like it feels like over 50 is like a requirement now.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be like anything under 45, you thought this is automatic, basically.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I mean, the expectation is pretty much anything under 55, you should make probably 90% of the time.
Yeah, that's just wild. In 1987, number 7 Ohio State ties LSU, number 4 LSU in Death Valley.
Yes, can we just pause for a moment and praise God for the end of the tie? I mean, I know it still occurs in NFL football during the regular season, but
rarely
yes.
does it occur.
Yes.
But yeah, still occurs in soccer, I believe.
Oh yes. Oh yes. It's so emotionally unsatisfying.
Yeah, doesn't occur in hockey anymore.
Yeah.
They got rid of
Wait,
it.
Did they in the regular season?
Yeah, they got rid of it in the regular season. They do shootouts now.
That's right.
Trying to think. NBA certainly no. NFL rarely. Baseball no. Anyway, 1988 Soviet Union throwers sweep the medals in the hammer throw at the Seoul Olympics. Sergei Litvinov wins the gold with an Olympic record of 84.8 meters ahead of teammates Yuri Sitka and Juri Tom. I assume all these guys were eventually outlawed for doping of some kind.
Maybe they were never caught, but I mean, come on. It's the Soviets. It was the 80s.
Yeah. I just don't trust. I don't trust anything Soviet from the 80s
No.
or Soviet. Period. I just don't trust it.
Yeah.
In 1997, Seattle Mariner Ken Griffey Jr. hits his 56th home run of 1997.
Yeah. What I'm not keeping track. Like, who leads the majors in home runs right now, and what are they at?
Yeah, so it's Matt Olson of the Braves. He's on my fantasy team. That's why I know that off the top of my head. But I can give it to you real quick. He is at, for this season, 53 home runs. So he hit quite a few.
All right. And there's what, like one week left of the regular season?
Yeah, there's a week left. So, okay. And Ken Griffey Jr., as far as I know, has stayed out of any sort of steroid conversation whatsoever. So that's a true 56.
Did you say senior or junior?
Junior.
Okay, yeah, junior. Not that senior that I'm aware of has also had any issues.
Yeah,
but...
yeah. But that was the same season, I believe McGuire and Sosa were, knocking on 70.
Oh, was it? That could be
close. And because it was the three of them were sort of tied for a while, and then Sosa and McGuire went up. But yeah, I mean, that's a true close to 60 for Ken Griffey.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so who do you like out of that list, John? It wasn't the most robust options for this day in sports history.
I mean, despite not knowing the team that Ed Reulbach threw against, I think Ed Reulbach may take this. Becomes doubleheader shutouts as a pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that is utterly inconceivable today. Like,
yes,
completely inconceivable in modern day baseball.
There was a relief pitcher that threw relief innings in both doubleheaders, and that was wild this year. Like you would have thought, somebody turned, somebody performed a miracle on the field.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fact that he started both games and pitched complete games is pretty impressive.
Yeah, let's go with that. All right, one thing you liked.
This week I was on the road, and at the last minute, attended a Reds game with Steve in Ohio.
Yeah.
So joined Steve in Ohio at with his family at the Cincinnati Reds game. Unfortunately, they lost to the Twins in what was a very exciting game. But yeah, great game. A lot of fun.
So was Holly there as well? What about Kyle and Hannah? No, not Hannah.
Hannah. Yeah, they were all there. Pax was there as well. Little Pax,
nice.
Grant, all of them. Not Chase,
Grant,
obviously.
Right.
But it was with all of them. It was a good time. Yeah,
Excellent.
Pax and I don't get along. He sees me and starts crying. So we have some things to work on. But yeah, I saw him a few times while I was out there, and not pleased.
Yeah.
Not pleased with me.
That's a tough job you got there, John. I remember you sending me the picture from your seats, like behind home plate, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was maybe a quarter of the way up the stadium. Yeah. So, but had some lovely food there as well. It was great.
Nice. So I'm going to go with so last night here in Indy, there was a live event for the Happy Rant podcast, and it was the very last episode. They are shutting the podcast down after 10 years of recording episodes. I think they're up to like 460 somewhere around.
Okay, so we'll catch them.
We've got a ways to go. So live event, it was good to experience that. I actually got to talk to each of them briefly during the breaks. I mean, for those who don't know, that was one of the inspirations for this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's remarkable that they did it for 10 years. I don't know that you and I will get to 10 years, John.
No, but we're at, how many years are we at now? Are we just completing?
We're finishing our 4th.
Yeah. So I guess we'd have to go 8 or 9 years to get to 400, right?
Well, yeah, we'd have to get to 8 or 9, I think, to get there. Yeah.
That may be too long.
Yeah. I mean, but fun live event. And then they do a Q&A as part of those. And so I did ask a question during the Q&A. So we can.
What was your question?
I asked each of them, the only Barnabas and Ted responded, but I asked them to talk about a college or seminary professor who made a difference in their life, and what was it about them that made that difference in their life. So good event. Nice to be around that, and just kind of sad in the sense of I've been listening to that podcast for many years now, and it just kind of becomes part of your regular rhythm of dipping into their of them being part of your life in some way. So but yeah, it was a good event, and so glad I was able to go with that. My son John went with me, and
fun.
A lot of fun. So all right, well, John, we better wrap this up. Yeah, I actually have to earn my keep here at the Gospel Coalition Conference. So I speak later this afternoon, which by the time this drops, it will have been yesterday. So.
And you're just making it up, right? You're just winging this?
Oh, of course. Yeah. You know me, John.
Yes.
I'm always off the cuff, right? But if you happen to be in Indy for the Gospel Coalition and listen to this in time, you can see me around the conference. I'm doing a book signing. Can you believe this? A book signing, John.
At the Gospel Coalition. That's next level. Yeah. That's next level for sure.
Yeah, that'll be Tuesday afternoon. So after this episode drops, so if you catch it early and then you're like, man, I have to get to Indy to go to Doc's book signing, that there's still time.
Yep.
There's still time. All right. We have talked NFL and college football. Props to Ohio State for their big win. We have talked knowledge. We have talked Ed Reulbach. We have talked a Reds baseball game. And we have talked the Happy Rant Live podcast event. And so I think by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics. And so all that's left to say is until next time, the Lord bless you all real good.
Later.